Use the side entrance. Park near the trash bins. That's what my mother said when she called to invite me to my sister's victory party. No hello, no how have you been, honey? Just those 9 words, like I was the hired help. I'm Sloane Bennett. I'm 43. And to the world, I'm invisible. But not because I failed. I've spent the last 2 decades saving lives behind closed doors. I've operated in war zones, diffused threats, walked out of embassies seconds before they were bombed. But none of them mattered to the Bennetts. To them, I was just the disappointing daughter, the one who never smiled for Christmas cards, the one who didn't belong on their polished, picture-perfect walls. So when they called, after 7 years of silence, I knew it wasn't because they missed me. It was because they needed something. The driveway was full when I pulled up. Teslas, black SUVs, even one with diplomatic plates. Of course, it was Leia's big night, her first major legislative win, the new Bennett Star. I parked where they told me to, behind the recycling bins, beside a rusty ladder and a half-open bag of mulch. I stepped out in a black blazer, hair pulled back, hands steady, but my stomach twisted. The back door creaked open before I even knocked. Mum was in the kitchen, stirring something with one hand and holding her phone with the other. She glanced at me, nodded once, and said, your gift goes on the table. Don't say too much tonight. No hug? No, how was the drive? Just orders? Inside, everything shimmered. Gold-rimmed glasses, polished wood floors. Every politician and donor in a 100-mile radius gathered around Leia. My father spotted me from across the room and gave a tight, robotic nod. Political, not paternal. Then came Leia, radiant, camera-ready, and cruel. "Oh, there you are," she called, loud enough for everyone to turn. "This is my sister, Sloane. She does something for the government, I think. Maybe paperwork at Langley." Laughter, polite, controlled, sharp. And I stood there smiling, that brittle, practiced smile I'd worn for years. The one that said, it's fine, I'm used to this. I wasn't. I walked past the buffet, past the donors shaking hands, and slipped into the hallway toward the study. On the wall, I saw it, the family portrait, framed, centered. But I was gone. The spot where I stood had been cropped out entirely. Only a sliver of my shoulder remained, cut so precisely it looked intentional. That's when it hit me. They didn't forget me. They erased me, not because I failed, but because I didn't fit the narrative. I didn't shine for the cameras. I didn't boost their brand. And for anyone who follows revenge stories, sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who were supposed to love you first. I used to think it happened suddenly. That moment when they gave up on me, like there was one conversation, one choice, one line I crossed that made them stop seeing me as part of the family. But standing in that hallway, staring at the photo where I'd once stood, I realised it wasn't sudden at all. They'd been erasing me for years. Carefully, quietly, like the night I told them I was leaving Quantico early. I didn't quit. I was recruited, hand-picked for a black ops program within the CIA. Not many people get that kind of offer. I thought they'd be proud. I remember sitting in my father's study, same leather chair, same fireplace crackling. I was 23. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when I said, "Dad, I've been selected. It's classified, but it's real. They chose me." He didn't look at me, just stared into the flames and said, "So you're giving up?" Not a question, a conclusion. Then my mother, always more dangerous when she smiled, placed her teacup on its saucer and said, Not everyone's meant to be exceptional, sweetheart. Just like that. Not a single congratulations. No be safe, just silence, judgment, and that gentle little death sentence in her voice. And from then on, it started. They stopped including me in family emails. My name got dropped from the group chat. I'd show up to Christmas dinner after a 20-hour flight from Afghanistan and find that my seat at the table had already been filled. By Leia's new campaign manager, there was 1 year I mailed gifts home from Jordan, hand-carved, wrapped tight. I found them months later, still in the shipping box, unopened in the garage behind the snowblower. They weren't just disappointed in me, they were embarrassed by me, and the thing is, I kept trying, kept calling, showing up, sending photos, updates. I thought if I just proved myself enough, risked enough, they'd finally look at me and see someone worth loving, but they never did. Have you ever tried your absolute best just to be seen and still felt invisible? Because that's what I felt like. Not hated, not shunned, just quietly edited out of the story. That kind of silence, it doesn't come all at once. It happens over years until one day you realise you were never part of the picture to begin with. The call came on a Tuesday. I almost didn't answer. The name on the screen, Leia Bennett, looked like a wrong number. It had been 7 years. No birthdays, no texts, no, "Are you alive?" after a bombing in Kabul made the news. But now she was calling. I hesitated, picked up. Her voice was syrupy sweet, almost apologetic. "Sloane, I've been thinking about you a lot lately." "Sure you have." She talked about her campaign, how her new education bill was gaining traction, how she'd been meeting with lawmakers, how she wanted to rebuild the bridge between us. I didn't say much, just listened. Then she dropped it. "Hey, you know Senator Carver, right? He's the swing vote. He respects you. Would you consider maybe having a word?" There it was. Not "I miss you," not "I'm sorry," just "Would you mind leveraging your silent service for my political brand?" I told her I'd think about it. Later that night, Mum called out of nowhere, suggested lunch at the Hay Adams Hotel in DC. She wore Chanel. I wore Doubt. She asked about work but didn't wait for an answer. Then leaned in, smile tight, and said, "You owe it to this family, Sloane. All the doors we opened for you, the name we gave you." I looked her dead in the eye. "What exactly do I owe you for, Mum? The part where you pretended I didn't exist? Or the part where you used me when it was convenient?" She didn't flinch, just stirred her coffee. "This family has sacrificed a lot for your silence. It's time you gave back." Her words hit like a slap. Not because they were loud, but because they were so calm, so rehearsed. A few days later, Leia showed up at my hotel, uninvited, a bottle of Cabernet in hand, and that signature fake sincerity on her face. "I came to make peace," she said. She offered me a job. Not in intel, not in ops. A desk position, real hours, health benefits. You've earned some normalcy, don't you think? In her world, this was an olive branch. In mine, it was an insult wrapped in ribbon. "Thanks," I said, "but I already have a job." Her smile dropped. "Then don't blame me," she snapped. "You had your chance." That night, something inside me cracked. It wasn't just that they tried to buy my silence with fake love. It was how quickly the warmth turned to threat the second I said no. It made one thing painfully clear. I was never family to them. I was leverage. A tool they only remembered when something needed fixing. And now that I'd refused, I had a sick feeling in my gut. They weren't going to let that go. I found out the same way everyone else did, through an article. Operation Winterlight. Heroism or reckless endangerment? Big, bold headline. A shadowy photo of me, taken without my knowledge. Blurred face, but the caption was clear. CIA officer implicated in unsanctioned actions overseas. My stomach dropped. I read every line twice. The piece twisted the facts of one of my darkest missions, turning a rescue into a scandal. They dragged out names that had never been public, suggested I'd gone rogue, made it sound like But it was the details that gave it away, the kind of things only family would know. The author referenced a memo that was never leaked to press, only ever printed and handed to my father for safekeeping. The article even quoted phrases I'd once said privately to Leia, word for word. They did it. My family leaked my classified past. And for what? Because I wouldn't make a phone call, because I refused to be her pawn. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I got in my car. Leia lived in a glossy condo downtown, clean lobby, concierge with perfect teeth. She opened the door in silk pyjamas and bare feet, holding a glass of wine like she didn't have a care in the world. I held up the article, said nothing. Behind her, a friend laughed from the couch. "Oh my God, Leia, you actually did it?" Her face froze. She wasn't expecting me. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just looked at her. She knew, and I left. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't call anyone at Langley. Instead, I opened my safe. Inside were the original documents from Operation Winterlight. Every mission, detail, time-stamped, reviewed, cleared, the ethics review, the satellite evidence that proved I saved those children, that I disobeyed an order to save more lives, not cost them. I sent it all, sealed and silent, to Director Chen with a note. No request, just the truth. No dramatic statement, no press release, just the facts. Here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't need blood to hurt. Sometimes it's done with smiles, soft voices and wine glasses, but it cuts anyway, and this one cut deep. Because now I knew they weren't just okay with erasing me. They were willing to destroy me, to protect their image. That realization, it didn't harden me, it clarified me. I wasn't going to fight them in the dark anymore. I was going to step into the light and let the world decide who I really was. The call came 3 days after I submitted the file. Blocked number, one ring, then another. I almost didn't pick up. Sloan Bennett? Yes. This is Director Chen. You're needed at the Joint Intelligence Oversight hearing next week. Public testimony. No details on your prior case. Just a speech. We'd like you to close the session. My breath caught. Close the session, not file a report, not sit quietly in the back row, stand at the front, speak, be seen. I hadn't been seen in decades, not really. Not. The hearing was held in one of the grand old chambers on Capitol Hill. Red carpet, heavy wood, cameras mounted in corners, live streaming to every major network, security thick as concrete. I wore a black suit. No medals, no pins, just a name badge. Speaker Sloan Bennett. The name alone startled people. A few aides whispered to each other. A senator actually did a double take, but I barely noticed because in the second row, right near the press gallery, they were there. My mother. Impeccable as ever. My father. Jaw locked tight. Leia. Pale, still recovering from the fallout. They'd been invited by the committee as family of the final speaker. They had no idea. Director Chen walked to the podium first, gave a formal intro. Then, "Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker has dedicated her life to national security in ways most will never understand. Her name has rarely appeared in headlines, but her choices have saved thousands. Please welcome the Director of Strategic Intelligence Policy, Ms. Sloan Bennett." Gasps. Audible. Cameras flashed. My father blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Leia's mouth opened, then closed. Mom froze. Hands tight in her lap. I stepped forward, heart pounding but steady, and I spoke. I talked about sacrifice without spotlight, about serving in silence, about choosing to save lives even when it meant losing pieces of yourself. And I ended with this: we talk a lot about duty in this country, about family, about legacy, but sometimes those words are used as weapons. I've learned that you don't need to be accepted to be honourable, and you don't need to be seen to stand for something that matters. I stepped back to a standing ovation. The whole chamber stood. Everyone except them. They sat stiffly, small in their seats, suddenly strangers in a room where I was no longer invisible. Outside, the reporters swarmed. I didn't give them a quote, didn't smile for the cameras, just walked straight to the car waiting by the curb. Inside, the aide next to me said, "You know, that speech, it's going to live longer than the smear ever could." I didn't answer. But for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt like I existed. Not for their approval, not for politics, but for me. The house hadn't changed. Same iron gate, same perfect hedges trimmed to military precision. Same gravel that crunched under my tyres like they were judging me. I hadn't been back since the hearing. Not a call, not a message, not even a shallow congratulations, just silence. But I hadn't come for them. I came for the flag, David's flag. It was the one thing that still mattered, the one thing they didn't deserve to hold. I walked up to the door without knocking. The housekeeper must have seen me through the cameras because it swung open before I touched it. Inside, the air was tight, like no one had exhaled in days. They were all in the living room. My father, arms crossed. My mother, stone still in her usual cream cardigan. Leia, curled in on herself, mascara smudged, like the weight of the fallout hadn't just cracked her image, but crushed her from the inside. No one spoke. I walked to the den. The flag was still there. Still shoved behind the cabinet, next to a stack of old board games. I picked it up, brushed off the dust, folded it with care, held it to my chest for a second longer than I meant to. Then I turned to them. My father's jaw tightened. "You humiliated us." I didn't flinch. "No," I said, "you did. I just stopped protecting your version of the story." My mother whispered, barely audible, "Sloan, I didn't know." I met her eyes for the first time in years. "No, you didn't want to know." "And Leia," she looked up, voice cracking, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "But it did. I didn't think they'd use my leak." "You didn't think I'd matter enough to get hurt." She broke, quiet sobs, no theatrics, just raw regret. And for a brief second I felt it too, the ache of what could have been. But I didn't come for closure, I came for clarity. I pulled the key from my pocket. The one they gave me when I was 16 still had the tiny SB tag on it from the locksmith. I placed it on the glass coffee table. It clicked like a gavel. "This is the last time I'll ever be in this house." No one stopped me, no one begged, just silence, again. But this time, I wasn't the one afraid of it. That was 8 months ago. Now I live in a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I chop my own wood, brew coffee slow, take walks before dawn. I still work, just in a different way. I train the next generation now, not in espionage, but in ethics.